Hello and welcome to the Black Dog Writes. Today I'm going to be talking about how to organise your project so that it's the most approachable it can be, even when you're not particularly motivated. So we're going to be looking at ways that you can start and continue even on days when you don't feel good about it and when you might not have a large amount of motivation. So the key principle of this technique is if not X, then Y. So if I can't bring myself to do this one particular aspect, is there another way that I can start? And then once you're started, you often find that it's easier to work your way up into other parts of that project. Now, please remember, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm just someone who has found a lot of different ways around depression to accomplish the kinds of things that I want to accomplish. If you think that you might be depressed, please seek the help of a medical professional. If you find that very hard to do, then see my video that I made just for people like you, how to ask for help when you're depressed.
So this is my desk and this is my project. I would like to write a book. If you've ever paid any attention to advice about starting projects or managing projects like this, you'll know that something like this, write a book, is far too vague to really be helpful as a prompt. This is something that we need to break down. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it down in such a way as to make it easiest to approach. So particularly when you don't have a lot of motivation to start writing or to engage in any part of this project. So first of all, what does writing a book involve? Well, if you're writing a non-fiction book like I am, I'll put that down there. You're writing a non-fiction book, then it's going to involve a certain amount of research. And then for research, we're going to break research down into its component parts. So we've got non-fiction, we've got our research, and then under research, there are things like reading. Sometimes research is just reading. And then there might be also, let's say, some of that is note-taking. And then across over here, we've got research, and we've also got the major component, which is writing. But writing also needs to be broken down because you can't just write at the beginning and keep going till the end. Wouldn't that be nice? So we've got sort of loose writing, which is drafting. And then we've got tighter writing, so editing or second drafting. And then we've got polishing. And then again, for a non-fiction book over here, we need to put in things like citations and referencing. Notes, references, bibliography. Now, all of these component parts, they're different subjects, but they're also a different level of effort. So what's important here, if you're organizing something in order to be able to access it, no matter what your level of motivation is, it's useful to be able to decide which of these component parts is a place where you can easily approach your project and which are harder parts. So what you find easy and what you find difficult are going to depend on your own personal preferences. So I'm just going to show you what I mean. If I go into, let me see, writing, drafting, editing. So from editing, one of the things I really, really hate about editing is going through criticism. And what I mean by this is reading through criticism of my work that someone else has done and correcting the parts that they weren't convinced by or the things that they didn't like. Now that is kind of emotionally taxing. So the reason that this is a massive pain is because it's emotionally taxing. So that is perhaps the hardest part. And that's not where I'm going to try to start, even if that's really the pressing thing on my agenda. So I'm almost never going to start my day by picking up a piece of criticism and doing the corrections. No. It's not an easy way to get into your project, especially if you're having trouble actually sitting down and doing it. So where I want to start when I'm unmotivated kind of depends on the level of lack of motivation. If it's because I'm feeling self-conscious, if it's because I'm feeling not particularly positive about my work, I'm probably going to start over here as a sort of entry point. So reading. Reading is quite easy to do when you're unmotivated. Reading and note-taking. So this is what I mean by if not X, then Y. So say criticism and corrections is what I really need to do. That's the pressing thing on my agenda. And say that's something that I can't face. I'm putting it off, and I'm putting it off, and I'm putting it off. So what I'm actually going to do is, if not criticism, then something else. Say research. And when you have a massive project like writing a book, there's always something else that you can do at a different point that is an easier entry into doing work. So once you start on something, the idea is that the research and reading will inspire you, it'll make you feel more competent, especially if you can say do 15, 20, 30 minutes, then actually getting in and doing part of the project will help you feel better about going into the really unpleasant part, the criticism over here. And if it doesn't, at least you've done the 20, 30 minutes of reading. That's not something that is going to go to waste. When I'm feeling really good, I can start here somewhere, writing or drafting. These parts are the real meat of the project, where a lot of motivation and a positive attitude really go a long way. So sometimes I'll be able to start in here, writing and drafting. At other times, when I'm finding that a bit difficult, actually even something over here can be helpful.
So this looks really dull. Citations, footnotes, references, bibliography. But sometimes the fact that it is really dull, that it requires not a great deal in the way of concentration, means that this is a good place to start. So dull stuff that I wouldn't want to do when I'm feeling super motivated, this kind of work is something that I can do when I feel as if I can do something that's technical, that's by rote, but not something that requires a bit more creativity, like the writing, drafting, even sometimes the editing over here requires a bit of positivity and a bit of creativity to make things sound the way that I want them to sound. The other thing that is quite useful is not breaking down by type of activity, as I've done here, but breaking down in terms of subject. So here is my book project, again, laid out in a slightly different way. So this is a vague representation of the chapters of the book that I'm writing. Over here, this is chapter 1. Chapter 1 is finished, that's why I've filled it in that hashed line. And then a representation of some of the subjects as I move along the chapters. So each of these chapters is in a state of draft or in a kind of better or worse state. And this means that I can go into any subject that I need for a bit of variety. Again, if not X, then Y, question mark. If I can't deal with the minutiae of sieges, for example, if I'm working on this section, then can I go to something like battle? Can I decide that there's something interesting that I would rather do over here? And none of this work is wasted. You're still working on various parts of your project, maybe not the one that you need to at the exact moment, but in many ways that doesn't really matter, because the aim is to keep yourself working, because the more that you work, the easier it is to do so. So in here somewhere, I've got little bits of things that are super fun. So, for example, there's still research that needs to be done around the battle chapters on skeletons and war injuries. So what kinds of injuries are typical for what I'm working on is Roman soldiers. There sadly isn't a great deal of evidence because most Roman soldiers were cremated, but looking at comparative evidence, what kind of injuries are you likely to get? And I don't know a great deal about that right now, so looking into that is one of my go-to subjects when I feel as if I can't work. So I let myself do things like look for sources. So look around the internet for books. One of the easiest things to do when you can't do something that is more involved. So look for sources, or sort of read in an idle sort of way. So I like to read comparative books, so books about war injuries from different kinds of wars. So this I know is an easy entry point. And you don't have to actually write all of this out or sketch all of this out. Just keep in your mind's eye what it is that is easiest for you. What are your soft entry points where you can manage 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour doing something that maybe isn't the most pressing thing in your project, but is something that will get you into it and keep you working on some aspect of your project, because that's going to keep you going. At best, it's going to inspire you to move into the area that you really need to be in. And at worst, it's doing something that's still going to need done anyway. Now let's look at an entirely different kind of project. So say that your aim is to exercise. So perhaps if you are a bit depressed or a bit unmotivated, one of the things that you want to do is to exercise to make yourself feel better. And again, we have this big, vague idea of what we want to do that we need to break down into something that's a bit more manageable. So by exercise, let's decide what we mean. Let's say you want to do the recommended amount of exercise, which is 30 minutes 3 times per week. And again, you might have to work up to doing this. So this is 30 minutes of high heart rate exercise. There's a couple of ways that you can break this down. So as we saw in the book project, there's variety. So different kinds of exercise. There's also intensity, which is the equivalent of the different kinds of book parts that need different levels of motivation. And then there's also time. So what I do when I need to exercise is that somewhere in different levels of variety, intensity, and time, I find something I can do today. So generally for me, my peak intensity is weights. And that's what I would like to do if I was super motivated. Every day I would get up and I would weight train. I don't, but I would like to. And then as we go down here, there's weights for less time. And also there's not self-motivated weight training. So this is when I put on something like a video, and for say 30 minutes or sometimes even for 10 minutes, I will just let the video tell me what to do. And that in many ways is easier than the self-directed weight training. And then at times when I can't bring myself to do any of this, what I will do is go down to yoga. And I find yoga easier to do because I can convince myself that it's just moving my body into different positions. And then if I need to take down the intensity of this or the challenge of what this looks like, I'll tell myself I only need to do a 10-minute yoga video. So down here is the absolute bottom of my motivation. So 10 minutes of yoga. This is the easy start point. If I can't do weights, can I do a video for 30 minutes? And if I can't bring myself to do that, can I do yoga for 10 minutes? If not X, then Y. So by changing the type of exercise, by changing the intensity of the exercise, and by changing the time of the exercise, it becomes easier to find something that fits your level of motivation at any particular time. Okay, and one last thing that I want to mention is about taking a step back and adding different things that will help into your project. So what I mean here is if your major project is like me, is to write a book, then you might have other things that will also help. So over here, I'm going to put eat healthily, and exercise is going to go down here. healthy exercise. So just taking these few for example. So maybe this is the project that you're working on. You're going to write a book, but your problem is motivation. Your problem is returning to the desk to do some part of this on particular days. So things that will help with this are eat healthy and exercise. So maybe if you want to write a book, what you're actually going to be able to do is maybe a little bit of exercise instead. And all of these things help because they're about your overall health and motivation are going to be improved by healthy eating and exercise. So even if you set out to write part of your book in a day, it's not very focused, is it? What you want to do is write a book, what you end up doing is maybe just a little bit of exercise and a little bit of healthy eating. At least you're keeping yourself in a good condition to be able to do this project. I am just going to summarize as I show you the white one who has been asleep on the desk the entire time I've been filming this video. The summary is the principle is if not X, then Y. So if you can't approach a difficult part of your project, can you approach an easier part? You don't have to do a great deal of work. Just keep in the back of your mind where the soft entry points are. Where is there something that you can do on the project, even if it isn't the most urgent part? Where is there somewhere that you can enter? And all of that is practice. It's practice getting started. It's practice sitting down and doing something. And it all helps you to be able to approach your project more easily. You don't always have to force yourself to sit down and do the most unpleasant part. You can build up to it. So figure out where your soft entry points are, keep those in mind, and go to them if you're having trouble sitting down and doing your project. I hope this video was useful to you. Next time, I'm going to be talking about how to start on your project or parts of your project when you feel a bit down and you don't have a lot of motivation to do so. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification button so that you're told when I make new videos. See you next time.